Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian. Today, I have a special guest with me where we're going to talk about the importance of protein, but particularly the importance of protein for breakfast.
Oh, I like that I'm special.
Yeah, of course you are.
Oh, I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic from the GymWits. And we just completed our protein episode. I'm sure that these will be spaced out, but we thought it would be a very cool idea for Tony to give some tips on how to increase your protein for breakfast. You know, as you had mentioned, everyone's good at getting protein for dinner, but breakfast, that's a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, and it's important because if you listen to the GymWits episode, you understand that your body, when you're sleeping, it goes into a catabolic state, and to get it out of there, you need to consume a good quality source and quantity of protein. Not to mention your body can't use a lot of protein all at one time, so getting it all at dinner isn't going to be as effective as spreading it throughout the day. So we're going to talk about protein for breakfast. Justin, what do you like to eat for breakfast?
Well, the obvious
Do you eat breakfast? I should start with that.
I do. Well,
I have to ask. Usually when I ask someone when I'm doing like basically like a food diary or I'm getting a 24-hour recall, I have to ask someone, when's the first time you eat or drink something?
You know what?
Because not everyone starts with breakfast, and sometimes they think I want them to say that they have breakfast, so they might lie to me.
You know what? For me, it's actually dependent on the day. It often takes me very long to be hungry before I wake up, and sometimes I'm hungry right away. So for me, and sometimes I sleep a little bit later than the average bear because of my job. So for me, I do eat. Yeah, I'm going to eat fairly soon after I wake up. So for me,
what do you eat?
If it's really breakfasty, usually I'm going to have some sort of eggs, some sort of either a toast or a potato, and I like to get fruit in my diet. I always try to do a smoothie. Sometimes I'll actually just start with the smoothie, then I'll wait maybe an hour or something, and then have my eggs and toast or something like that. Good
to know. So eggs, obviously, great source of protein. So
that's the obvious.
That's
one,
the
right?
obvious one, right? Now smoothie. I'm gonna save my smoothie spiel for a different episode.
All right.
Because it depends how you prepare the smoothie. Actually, if you use milk, great source of protein. Right. So it kind of depends what's in there.
Personally, I like to prepare it with water, but I add some yogurt.
Okay. So yogurt's a good source of protein. Yeah. So, sounds like you're doing a pretty good job starting your day with some protein. Other sources of protein that you just said, you could always have like yogurt. Greek yogurt in particular tends to have a higher protein content. Cottage cheese, if you're, a cheese person, tends to have a high protein content. Cheese on the eggs, maybe you want to just do 1 to 2 eggs, maybe add some cheese to it for some flavor, also adding protein as well.
What I like to do with eggs, you could add the cheese obviously, but adding a little dollop of sour cream or creme fraiche. I don't know how much protein is in there.
Not much,
so,
but
I actually prefer it sometimes over the cheese. But if you're eating 3 eggs, you're good, and that makes it nice and tasty.
Yeah, there you go. But actually, I use Greek yogurt instead of sour cream a lot, like on a baked potato, let's say. So
yes,
maybe if you did that instead of the sour cream, you could add protein that way. I wonder how that would taste.
Might be good. Yeah, when I do it, I just add it like a little spoonful for taste. It's it. So that's how I make my eggs better. So.
Well, when I do scrambled eggs or an omelet, I'll add a little bit of milk to fluff it up. So there you go. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Something like that.
Yeah. One thing I really think is important to note is, like you said, when you wake up in the morning, if you're doing something really breakfasty, you'll have this. And that's a huge thing I think people struggle with, is waking up in the morning and feeling like they have to have a breakfast food. Like they have to have cereal, or they have to have maybe a donut or a muffin or a bagel. But when you wake up in the morning, if you wanted to have your leftovers, which is like chicken, vegetables, and baked potato, that was your dinner, and you wanted to have that for breakfast, it's perfectly fine and perfectly acceptable. Because you're going to get a balanced meal and you're going to get your protein. And food at the end of the day is just fuel and nutrients. It's really not, there's no breakfast food or lunch food or dinner food.
Is marketing. Now, think about in Asian countries, a lot of times for breakfast, they will have a little bit of fish and some soup.
I didn't know that, actually.
Right? And that's some of the high life expectancy countries, and also some of the countries with very low issues of cardiovascular health and blood pressure. Very, very low obesity rates.
Yeah, definitely.
So think about having a little piece of fish.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. I mean, in the previous episode on the GymWits, we talked about like your lean sources of protein. Fish is definitely one of those, and it's a great heart healthy source of protein for sure. So yeah, I mean, like I said, if you had fish the night before for dinner and you want to have that for breakfast, totally fine.
What about some other little clever sources you might not have thought of?
Well, we talked about it on the other episode. I feel like we're just repeating the episode, but we're not. It's totally different.
Totally different.
Yeah. A clever thing to add is nutritional yeast. It's one of my favorite things ever, especially for vegans or vegetarians. It has that creamy, the cheesy texture, but if you are lactose intolerant, or you maybe just don't prefer to have cheese, adding nutritional yeast is a great thing. 2 tablespoons is already 8 grams of protein, which is awesome because 8 grams of protein is considered 1 serving, and you usually need about 3 to 4 in a meal, depending on your size. So that's always good. Using, like we've mentioned before, like whole grains tend to have a higher protein content. So if you're doing, say, oatmeal, it's a natural whole grain. It'll probably have more protein than Rice Krispies, let's say.
Especially if you add a little milk to your...
And then if you cook it with milk, you have protein that way. And then you add a little bit of walnuts on top. You know, you're going to get a lot if protein balance that way. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Nuts, peanut butter. I mean, they're technically a healthy fat, depending if if it's peanut butter, you're going to get more of the fat than the protein.
Although peanut butter is not a nut, right? It's a legume, technically.
Technically, it's a legume. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, while you're at it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But so that's a great thing. Pumpkin seeds are really good. They have more protein than most other seeds. So you could like sprinkle those in your oatmeal or just throw it in your cereal if you're doing like Cheerios, let's say. So that's pretty much it.
Now, just to reiterate, maybe not everyone has listened to the GymWits episode. Why is it so important to have protein in the morning after you wake up? So it gets you out of that like catabolic state that your body naturally goes into when you sleep. It also is super filling. There's a lot of studies that show people that have protein for breakfast have less calories throughout the day. They feel less hungry and therefore eat less throughout the day. So you might want to incorporate it. And then once again, if you're not having it for breakfast, you might have it for lunch and dinner, and your body's only going to use so much at one time. What about for brain function? I've heard that people who eat eggs, especially adolescents, teenagers, perform better on tests and things like that. Ever heard of anything like that? Nothing directly related. I have never heard anything like that. But protein is just, important for your, your cell, your functions on a cellular level. So I'm sure it has some impact on brain function. But honestly, more actually carbohydrates are better for brain function. That's what provides your body with that energy. Now, what about sources that people might think are providing protein but are really not the best sources? I think if we're going back to breakfast, which I think we should focus on, like bacon, sausage, they think there's protein in there, but actually it's mostly fat and it's very highly processed. I mean, not to get me wrong, there are sausages and bacon that are less processed and don't have all the additives, and there are better, brands out there. But it's still, if you read the nutrition facts label, you'd be surprised to find that the protein is pretty minimal for the calories that you're getting and the saturated fat that you're probably getting with it. So it doesn't always necessarily count as a protein. Is there a decent substitute for your typical breakfast meat? What about, like, say, a soy sausage, something along those lines.
Those are probably because soy is
No,
considered.
those are a little processed as well.
They're a little processed as well. So the protein probably would be higher because the soybean has more protein per ounce than by the time you process the bacon from the actual meat. So that is definitely an option, but always read the nutrition facts label and make sure you're getting adequate amount of protein that way.
Awesome. So, yeah.
So I think that's about wraps it up, right? We just wanted to talk about application of protein, the importance of protein for breakfast. If you guys have any other questions about how to add protein into the diet, you can always contact me. It can be found on my Instagram, my Twitter page, my Facebook page. I have a YouTube channel and a website, tipswithtony.com. Tony with an I, never forget that. I always get mistaken for a guy sometimes. I don't know why.
Well, maybe because your name is Tony.
But if you hear me talk, you know that I feel like I sound like a girl.
Yes, you very much so. Although today, nowadays, you never know, but you do sound like a girl.
I do. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning in. You are listening to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.